They tried to rewrite the prenup after I got rich, so I played the clause they forgot existed. I, 32 male, never thought a piece of paper signed 7 years ago would become my nuclear option. But here I am, watching my wife Elena, 30F, and her family learn that sometimes the fine print cuts both ways. What started as their attempt to cash in on my success became the very thing that set me free. Let me back up. When Elena and I got engaged in 2017, I was nobody special, a software developer making $75,000 at a mid-tier company. Living in a one-bedroom apartment with IKEA furniture and dreams bigger than my bank account. Elena came from money. Her father owned a chain of successful restaurants, her mother was a prominent real estate agent, and they lived in a house that could have been featured in Architectural Digest. I loved Elena, but her parents? They tolerated me at best. Her father Ricardo made it clear I wasn't his first choice for his princesa. Her mother Carmen smiled to my face, but I'd catch her whispering to Elena in rapid Spanish whenever I walked into her room. The message was crystal clear. I wasn't good enough for their daughter. You understand, Micho, Ricardo said to me one evening over dinner, using the diminutive like a weapon. Elena is used to a certain lifestyle. We just want to make sure she's protected. That's when they brought up the prenup. I was devastated. Here I was, planning to marry the woman I loved, and her family was already planning for our divorce. Elena tried to soften it, saying it was just a formality, that her parents insisted on it for all their children. It doesn't change anything between us, she said, squeezing my hand. I know you're not marrying me for money, but it felt like they were calling me a gold digger before I'd even said, I do. The prenup was brutal. If we divorced, I'd walk away with whatever I'd earned myself, nothing from Elena's trust fund, nothing from the investments her parents had set up for her, nothing from the properties they'd bought in her name. I'd get my clothes, my car, and whatever was in my personal bank account. That was it. This seems pretty one-sided. I told the lawyer Elena's family had hired to draft it. He shrugged. Your fiancé's family has significant assets to protect. This is standard in these situations. Standard. Like I was some interchangeable fortune hunter who'd wandered into their daughter's life. The worst part was sitting through that lawyer meeting while Ricardo and Carmen discussed my hypothetical greed like I wasn't even there. They talked about protection from potential opportunists and safeguarding generational wealth, while I sat in an uncomfortable chair, feeling about 2 inches tall. The lawyer kept addressing them directly, rarely making eye contact with me. I was just the signature they needed to make their document legal. What if I want to contest some of these terms? I'd asked quietly. The lawyer had looked at me like I'd suggested robbing a bank. These are fairly standard provisions, Mr. Chin. Your fiancé's family has been very generous in their approach. Generous. Right. But here's the thing. I wasn't marrying Elena for money. I was marrying her because she made me laugh, because she believed in my dreams when I didn't believe in them myself, because she saw potential in me that her parents couldn't see. So I signed their prenup. Every humiliating page of it. Elena cried when I told her I'd signed. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I know this isn't fair. But once we're married, once they see how good you are for me, things will change. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. The signing ceremony felt like a funeral for my dignity. Ricardo and Carmen were all smiles, suddenly warm and welcoming now that their daughter's assets were legally protected from her gold-digging husband. They insisted on taking us to dinner afterward, a celebration that felt more like a victory lap for them than anything else. Welcome to the family, Carmen had said, raising her glass. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was welcome now that they'd legally established I couldn't touch their money. The wedding was beautiful, expensive, and everything Elena had dreamed of. Her parents spared no expense. Destination ceremony in Costa Rica, 150 guests, flowers flown in from Ecuador. I felt like an extra in someone else's movie, but Elena was radiant, and that's all that mattered. For the first few years, we were happy. Elena got a job at an art gallery, I kept coding, and we lived modestly in a small house her parents helped us buy. Well, helped Elena buy. The deed was in her name only, for the prenup. I paid half the mortgage anyway. Her parents remained politely distant. I was the son-in-law they'd learned to tolerate, the necessary accessory to their daughter's happiness. Family dinners were exercises in patience, with Carmen asking Elena about work in Spanish while I sat there understanding every third word, and Ricardo discussing business investments I wasn't wealthy enough to understand. But I was working on something they didn't know about. Since college, I'd been tinkering with an idea for a data compression algorithm. Nothing revolutionary, just a more efficient way to handle specific types of financial data. I worked on it nights and weekends, refining it, testing it, dreaming about what it could become. In 2020, during the pandemic when everyone was home, I finally perfected it. I filed for patents, built a proof of concept, and started reaching out to companies. Elena knew I was working on some coding project, but I downplayed it. After years of her parents treating me like Elena's charity case, I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up, including my own. Then Goldman Sachs called. They wanted to license my algorithm, not for thousands or tens of thousands, but for $4.2 million. I stared at the contract for an hour before calling Elena. "Honey," I said, my voice shaking. "I need to tell you something." That night, I explained everything. The algorithm, the patents, the Goldman deal. Elena went from confused to excited to absolutely stunned. "For $1 million?" she whispered. "Are you serious? This is incredible. We have to tell my parents." And that's when everything changed. The next family dinner was different. Carmen actually hugged me, when we walked in. Ricardo clapped me on the back and called me Hijo instead of Mijo. Suddenly, I wasn't the disappointment who'd married above his station. I was Elena's brilliant husband who'd struck it rich. "We always knew you had potential," Carmen gushed, as if she hadn't spent 5 years looking at me like I was tracking mud through her house. "This calls for champagne," Ricardo announced, producing a bottle that probably cost more than my old monthly salary. To family. Elena beamed. She was so happy to see her parents finally accepting me, finally seeing what she'd seen all along. I wanted to share her joy, but something felt off. The same people who'd insisted I sign a prenup because I wasn't good enough for their daughter were now celebrating my success like they'd been my biggest supporters all along. The transformation was almost comical. Ricardo, who used to barely acknowledge my presence, suddenly wanted to know all about my brilliant business acumen. Carmen, who'd spent years speaking exclusively to Elena in Spanish during family gatherings, now made sure to include me in every conversation. They acted like they'd discovered buried treasure in their own backyard. "You know, we always believed in you," Ricardo said during that first dinner after the news broke. "We could see you had that entrepreneurial spirit." I almost choked on my wine. The same man who'd insisted on a prenup because he thought I was after his daughter's money was now claiming he'd always seen my potential. The revisionist history was breathtaking. Over the following months, the family dynamic shifted completely. Suddenly, I was included in investment discussions. Ricardo started calling me with business opportunities. Carmen began introducing me as our son-in-law, the software genius, instead of just Elena's husband. It should have felt good. I'd spent years wanting their approval, their acceptance. But now that I had it, it felt hollow. They didn't love me more. They loved my money more. Elena, meanwhile, was in heaven. Her parents were finally treating me the way she'd always wanted them to. She started talking about upgrading our house, taking expensive vacations, joining the country club where her parents were members. "We can finally live the life I grew up with," she said excitedly. "Isn't this what you always wanted? For them to see how amazing you are." It was what I'd wanted. But not like this. Not because of money. The invitations started rolling in: charity galas, exclusive events, private dinners with Ricardo's wealthy friends. I was being paraded around like a prized acquisition, introduced as Elena's husband, the tech millionaire. I felt like a trophy being shown off, proof that the Rodriguez family had good judgment in allowing their daughter to marry beneath her station. The real problem started about 6 months after the Goldman deal closed. Elena and I were having dinner at her parents' house when Ricardo brought up estate planning. "Now that you're a man of means," he said to me, "we should discuss updating your financial arrangements." "What kind of arrangements?" I asked. Carmen and Ricardo exchanged a look. "Well," Carmen said carefully, "that prenup you signed was written when you didn't have significant assets. Now that you do, it might not be appropriate anymore." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" Elena reached for my hand. "They just think we should make things more fair. The prenup protects my family's money, but now you have money too. Maybe we should protect both sides equally." "The prenup stands as written," I said firmly. "I signed it in good faith. It doesn't need updating." The room went quiet. Ricardo's smile faltered. Of course," he said quickly. "We're just thinking about what's best for both of you. For the family." But I could see the calculation in their eyes. When I was poor, they wanted to protect Elena's money from me. Now that I was rich, they wanted access to mine. Over the next few weeks, Elena kept bringing it up. Gently at first, then more persistently. "Don't you think it's weird that our finances are so separate?" she asked one night. "We're married. Shouldn't we share everything?" "We do share everything," I pointed out. "I pay for half of everything despite technically owning none of it." "That's not what I mean. I'm talking about real partnership, real equality." "Elena, what's this really about?" She sighed. "My parents think you don't trust me. The prenup made sense when you didn't have anything. But now, it looks like you're planning for our divorce." "I'm not planning for anything. I'm honoring the agreement your family insisted on. But things are different now." "Yes," I said quietly. Now your family wants my money too. Elena's face flushed. That's not fair. They're just trying to help us build a life together. But I knew better. I'd seen this movie before, and I knew how it ended. The pressure intensified. Ricardo started making comments about proper financial planning for couples. Carmen mentioned how modern marriages handled money differently. Even Elena's siblings got involved, casually mentioning how they'd structured their finances with their spouses. It all came to a head at Elena's birthday party. Her parents had thrown an elaborate celebration at their house, inviting their wealthy friends to meet Elena's successful husband. I felt like a trophy being shown off. During dinner, Ricardo stood up to make a toast. To Elena, he said, raising his glass, and to her husband, who's shown us that the right investment in family always pays off. Investment in family. Like I was a stock they'd bought low and were now ready to cash out. After the party, Elena confronted me directly. I want to redo the prenup, she said. I want us to be real partners, with everything shared equally. Elena, we are real partners. A piece of paper doesn't change that. It does when it says you don't trust me enough to share your life with me. Your family didn't trust me enough to share your life with me. Remember? I'm just playing by their rules. Those were different circumstances. Were they? Or is the only difference that now I have something they want? Elena started crying. I can't believe you think so little of me. Of us. And maybe that's when I realized the truth. It wasn't Elena I didn't trust. It was her family. And increasingly, it was the version of Elena who'd emerged since I got rich, the one who suddenly cared about country club memberships and luxury vacations and proper financial planning. I need time to think, I told her. Time to think about what? About whether you love me enough to trust me. Time to think about whether the woman I married would have asked me to change our prenup the minute I got money. The fight escalated from there. Elena accused me of being paranoid and greedy. I accused her of being her parents' puppet. We said things we couldn't take back. That night, Elena slept in the guest room. And for the first time since signing that prenup 7 years ago, I went back and read it carefully. Very carefully. I spent the weekend alone while Elena stayed at her parents' house to think. I used the time to do something I should have done years ago. I read every single word of our prenup with the eyes of someone who'd actually made money since signing it. The document was 47 pages of dense legal language, and I'd been so hurt and overwhelmed when I'd first signed it that I just focused on the basic premise. Elena keeps her money, I keep mine, and if we divorce, nobody gets anything from the other person. But buried in Section 12, subsection C, I found something interesting. In the event that either party's individual net worth exceeds $3 million during the course of the marriage, this agreement becomes null and void. And all assets acquired during the marriage revert to standard community property laws of the state of California. I read it 3 times. Then I called my lawyer. Jim, I need you to look at something. Jim Rodriguez had been my attorney since the Goldman deal. He was young, hungry, and brilliant. Everything Elena's family's silver-haired establishment lawyer wasn't. What's this about? He asked when I forwarded him the prenup. Section 12, subsection C. Tell me what it means. There was a long pause while he read. This is incredible, he said finally. Did you know this was in here? I just found it. Elena's family wants to renegotiate the prenup now that I have money. They want to renegotiate? Are they insane? This clause means you don't need to renegotiate anything. The prenup is already void. My heart started racing. What? Your net worth is over $3 million, right? That triggered this clause. The prenup has been invalid since your Goldman deal closed. Everything you've earned since then, and everything Elena has earned, is community property. But more importantly what? More importantly, everything Elena owned before the marriage that was protected by the prenup, that's still hers individually. But everything she's acquired during the marriage, including gifts from her parents and trust fund distributions, half of that is now yours. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Are you sure? Completely sure. This is actually brilliant legal writing. It's designed to protect both parties once either of them becomes significantly wealthy. The problem is, it sounds like Elena's family doesn't realize this clause exists. Jim explained that this type of clause wasn't uncommon in high-end prenups. It was essentially a safety valve, designed to prevent exactly the kind of unfair situation that could arise if one spouse became dramatically wealthier during the marriage. The $3 million threshold was carefully chosen, high enough that it wouldn't be triggered by normal career advancement, but low enough to activate when someone achieved genuine wealth. The lawyer who wrote this was actually being fair, Jim continued. He probably included this clause to protect both parties, knowing that circumstances could change dramatically over the course of a long marriage. The irony is that Elena's family probably insisted on it as additional protection for her, never imagining it would work in your favor. Should I tell them? Jim laughed. Are you kidding? They're asking you to renegotiate a prenup that's already working in your favor. I'd keep this information very close to your chest until you decide what you want to do with it. That night, Elena came home. She looked tired and sad, and part of me wanted to just fold her into my arms and pretend none of this had happened. I'm sorry about what I said, she began. But I need you to understand how this looks from my perspective. We're married, but we live like roommates splitting rent. That's not what I want for us. What do you want, Elena? I want us to combine our finances. Completely. Share everything equally, the way married couples should. I studied her face. And your parents? What do they want? They want us to be happy. They think financial stress is hurting our marriage. Financial stress? Elena, we're both millionaires. You know what I mean. The stress of keeping everything separate. The stress of not really being partners. I took a deep breath. If I agree to redo the prenup, what exactly are you proposing? Elena's face lit up. 50-50 split of everything. Past, present, and future. True partnership. Including your trust fund? Your inheritance? The properties your parents bought you? She hesitated. We could work out the details. Maybe keep some family assets separate but share everything else. And there it was. They wanted access to my money, but they still wanted to protect theirs. I need to think about it, I said. How long? Give me a week. That week was the longest of my life. Elena was sweet and attentive, clearly hoping to convince me through affection. Her parents invited me to lunch, dinner, a round of golf. Suddenly, I was the son-in-law they'd always wanted. But I couldn't stop thinking about that clause. Section 12, subsection C. During our golf game, Ricardo was particularly chatty. You know, Mijo, he said as we walked to the fourth tee, I have to admit something. When Elena first brought you home, I wasn't sure about you. I could tell, I said dryly. He laughed, but I was wrong. You've proven yourself to be exactly the kind of man Elena deserves. Someone who works hard, someone who succeeds, someone who can provide for her. Provide for her. Even now, it was about what I could give them. The prenup was my idea, he continued. I insisted on it. I was trying to protect Elena, but I see now that it was insulting to you. A man of your caliber, your success, you deserve better than that. It's fine, Ricardo. I understood why you wanted it. But now we can fix it. Make it right. Show you that you're truly part of the family. I wanted to ask him where this family feeling had been for the past 7 years. But I just nodded and lined up my shot. That night, I made my decision. I called a family meeting for Sunday dinner. Elena was excited, clearly thinking I was going to announce my agreement to rewrite the prenup. Carmen made my favorite meal. Ricardo bought another expensive bottle of champagne. We were sitting around their dining room table, the same table where they'd first brought up the prenup 7 years ago when I cleared my throat. I've thought about everything you've all said, I began. About updating our financial arrangements, about being true partners, about doing what's best for the family. Elena squeezed my hand encouragingly. And I've decided that you're absolutely right. The prenup as it currently stands isn't working anymore. Ricardo beamed. Excellent. We can have our lawyer draft something fair to both sides. Actually, I said, reaching into my jacket pocket, I don't think we need to draft anything new. Because I discovered something interesting about our current prenup. I placed a copy of the document on the table, open to section 12. Elena, do you remember this clause? She frowned, leaning over to read it. No, I don't remember discussing this. Ricardo? Carmen? Do you remember this part? They looked confused as they read. Then Carmen's face went pale. What does this mean? Elena asked. It means, I said calmly, that our prenup has been invalid for 6 months. Ever since my net worth exceeded $3 million. The room went dead silent. Invalid. Ricardo whispered. Completely void. Which means all assets acquired during our marriage are now community property. Elena's trust fund distributions, the properties you've gifted her, even the art she's purchased for the gallery, half of all of that now belongs to me. Elena's mouth fell open. That can't be right. I had my lawyer confirm it. Ironically, this clause was designed to protect both spouses once either became wealthy. Your family's lawyer actually wrote it to be fair to both sides. You just never expected it to apply to me. The silence stretched on as the implications sank in. I could see Ricardo mentally calculating what this meant. The downtown condo they'd bought Elena last year, the $200,000 they transferred from her trust fund for investment purposes, the valuable artwork she'd acquired for her gallery using family money, all of it subject to community property division. Carmen stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We need to speak to our attorney immediately. Go ahead, I said. But the law is the law. The clause is clear, and it's been triggered. Ricardo's face was turning red. This is some kind of trick. You're misinterpreting the language. Dad, Elena said quietly, still staring at the document. It's right here, in black and white. What do you want? Carmen demanded, turning to me. Money? You want to steal from our daughter? I don't want to steal anything, I said. I want exactly what you asked for. True partnership. Equal sharing. Everything 50-50, just like Elena suggested. That's not what we meant, Ricardo sputtered. Isn't it? You said financial stress was hurting our marriage. You said we should share everything equally. You said I should trust Elena enough to combine our assets. Well, good news, the law has already done that for us. Elena looked like she might throw up. So what happens now? Now we have a choice, I said. We can acknowledge that the prenup is void and proceed with our marriage as equal partners sharing all assets equally. Or we can get divorced, and I'll take half of everything as is my legal right under California community property law. You're threatening divorce? Elena asked, her voice shaking. I'm not threatening anything. I'm laying out our options. You wanted to redo the prenup to make things fair. Well, they're already fair. Fairer than you ever intended them to be. Carmen was pacing now. We need to fight this. We need to challenge the clause. On what grounds? I asked. Your own lawyer wrote it. Elena and I both signed it. It's been triggered by the exact circumstances it describes. There's nothing to challenge. You planned this, Ricardo accused. You've been planning this all along. I plan to honor the prenup your family insisted on. If you don't like how that turned out, maybe you shouldn't have tried to rewrite it when it was no longer convenient for you. Elena was crying now. I can't believe you'd do this to me. To us. Do what, Elena? Hold you to the same standard your family held me to? When I was poor, the prenup was sacred. Now that I'm rich, suddenly it needs to be changed. That's different. How? She couldn't answer. I stood up. I'm going home. Elena, you can come with me, or you can stay here. But if you choose to stay, we'll be having a very different conversation tomorrow. As I walked to the door, Ricardo called after me. You'll regret this. We'll find a way to fight this. I turned back. You know what, Ricardo? For 7 years, I tried to earn your respect. I tried to prove I was good enough for your daughter. I tried to be the son-in-law you wanted. But the truth is, you never respected me. You just respected my money. That's not true, Carmen protested weakly. Isn't it? The prenup was your idea when you thought I had nothing worth taking. Changing it was your idea when you realized I had something worth sharing. Either way, it was never about what was best for Elena and me. It was about what was best for you. I left them sitting around that table, staring at the prenup that had suddenly become their worst nightmare. The drive home was eerily quiet. I kept expecting my phone to ring, expecting Elena to chase after me, expecting some dramatic confrontation. But nothing came. Just the sound of my own breathing and the realization that 7 years of marriage might be ending not with a bang, but with the quiet revelation of a forgotten clause in a legal document. When I got home, I poured myself a drink and sat in my home office, staring at my copy of the prenup. The document that had once represented my humiliation had become my liberation. The family that had insisted on protecting their assets from me had inadvertently given me access to those very assets. But more than that, they'd shown me who they really were. And perhaps more importantly, they'd shown me who Elena really was when forced to choose between her husband and her family's money. I was about to find out which one mattered more to her.